kind of random.
What does joining Hip Hop Now's Patreon mean? It means supporting the kind of hip-hop content that keeps you updated on the latest hip-hop news and moves. It means supporting the production of content like That Time in Hip Hop and Hip Hop Now Reviews. It means you care about the conversation and preservation of hip-hop music and culture. Hip Hop Now Patreon supporters get access to bonus content, merchandise, and more. Support the movement. Become a supporter of Hip Hop Now podcast today at patreon.com/Hip Hop Now.
Coming up on this week's episode of Hip Hop Now podcast, 30 years of Ice Cube's classic album, Death Certificate, Snoop Dogg Ghost Road for Warren G back in the day, and my review of season 2 of Wu-Tang and American Saga. Don't worry, I won't talk like fake RZA, who also sound a little bit like DMX, the way he talk. You know what I mean? Well, I'm supposed to be the RZA. Let's do it.
Let's get right to the business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone.
Classic album.
Permanent Hip Hop Podcast. What up, y'all? I'm your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip-hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week. Returning listeners, glad you came back. Hope you hit that subscribe button. New listeners, I'm glad you found this podcast, and I hope you stick around. Pause. If you don't know, this podcast is sponsored and produced by the producers of this podcast over at patreon.com/Hip Hop Now. And if you want to know what that's all about, well, you heard the intro. But if you skipped the intro, the link is in the description of this episode. One bonus that comes with being a Patreon supporter is bonus episodes. And the brand new bonus exclusively for the producers of this podcast is my top, I'm being really dramatic, right? My top 10 diss records of all time. Now, if you know me, right, through Twitter, through listening to me on the radio back in the days, or you know me personally as a hip hop fan, you know I am not a fan of making top anything lists. Why? Because I constantly change my mind. Bars. I'm on a roll today, all right? But this is the thing. This was something that I always wanted to do, and I thought it'd be dope to do, and I finally did it. So it's my top 10. You got to listen to the episode to know the criteria, right? You got to listen to the episode to know where maybe some of your greatest, best, favorite diss records of all time fall within my list. If you want to check that out, go over to patreon.com/Hip Hop Now. And again, if that was too fast, the link is in the description of this episode you are listening to right now. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, allhiphop.com, djbooth.net, thesourcemagazine.com, sometimes, and a couple of other places where I'm getting some of these stories from. Let's get right into the business, though. So, recently, I read a story about there being rumors of a aftermath takeover, meaning, even though he's not on that label, but Snoop's dropping a new album, Dr. Dre's probably dropping a new album. Dr. Dre is also supposed to have some music featured on a Grand Theft Auto game. We don't know if it's the remaster of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. We don't know if his music that's being added to Grand Theft Auto 5. We don't know if his music for Grand Theft Auto 6, which isn't out yet. But nevertheless, new music from Dre, definitely some new music from Kendrick. But first up to bat in November will be Snoop with an album called the Algorithm Album. And then we'll have features from Busta Rhymes, Jadakiss, Mary J. Blige. Let's see if there's a track list. Snoop Dogg says Fabulous, Dave East, and Benny the Butcher will be featured on upcoming project. Oh yeah, he does say it. I don't know how to feel about that. Like I said and look, I'm not skeptical. I'm not mad at it. None of that stuff. I'm just saying that the album Snoop released recently in 2021 was pretty dope to me. I kind of get why Snoop would release another album, because they're going to do the Super Bowl and, I get it. But I really don't see why he can't just do the music that's on his latest album. I'm going to find it right now. This is live podcasting. I was going to say live radio, but this ain't radio. Yeah, he released the album in 2021. It's called From the Streets to the Suites. I believe I gave my impressions on this podcast. Yo, I really like that joint. It's pure West Coast hip hop. It's only 37 minutes. That's probably why I like it. Only 10 songs, but it is dope. So my expectations for the algorithm is it's probably going to be whack. Look, Snoop is one of those artists who've been around for a while, whose track record when it comes to releasing albums has been hit, miss, hit, miss, hit, miss. And I told you that last album was solid and it came out this year. I would easily call it one of the best of 2021. So for him to release another one, which I believe is November 10th, something like that, early November at the least, I don't care about the features. Because that doesn't mean it's going to be good, That's never an indication of it being good. It just means there'll be a lot of different people on this album. Now, I will say this. If somehow, leading up to this album, Snoop Dogg says the entire album is produced by Dr. Dre, I will feel differently. I'm just saying, Snoop over Dre, it's just never whack. It never sounds whack. They are perfect. So we'll see. Westside Gunn got himself into a little social media heat for one of his bars on his latest project, saying like one of his, I think it was a bar in one of his songs, but basically he said one of his, actually I think it was a tweet. His smallest chain costs more than all the chains on Mr. T's neck. Now, some people might say, like, so why would people be upset about that? But if Westside Gunn would have been that kind of rapper or the kind of rapper who does a little research, reads a little bit, gets in the know of some of the things that he might say, he would know that the reason, and Mr. T has been vocal about this for years, on record, video, radio, it don't matter, he's always said it. All the chains on his neck is a reference to slavery, right? I forget exactly what the line is. It's something to the effect of, let me see if I can find it. Let's not do guesstimates. So here's what Westside Gunn said. The difference, and it's a tweet. The difference between me and Mr. T is my smallest chain costs more than all his ish. Right? Let's see. Here's one dude who tweeted, that's cool, but Mr. T wasn't flexing to flash, but to represent the evolution of how we wore chains. They asked why he wore so many chains. He often replied, you weren't worried when my ancestors wore heavy chains. See? See what we talking about? Even Mr. T's daughter replied. This is what she said. The difference is all of it was real. All of it was given to him. All of it is his. He still has all of it. And he was a movie star, TV star, commercial star with bed sheets, pajamas, lunchboxes, dolls, cereal, cartoons, WrestleMania, albums, and he's my dad too. West Side Gun put out another tweet. Basically, he felt stupid for what he said, but at least he cleaned it up. Can't get on the man for recognizing his mistake and pointing out this, and this is what he said, I quote, "I love Mr. T. I was literally just sitting here thinking how he was so dope for the culture, how he was able to jump into the wrestling world and be fly, get on TV shows, movies, action figures. He was one of one. But the thing is, West Side Gun, bars, you sort of jumped out the window too soon because you were trying to play Mr. T, right? You were trying to play his swag from back in the days when you didn't have one chain. And Mr. T's reason for having those chains, it speaks of a man of integrity. You know what I'm saying? So I still like West Side Gun. There's nothing against him, but you know what it is. Benny the Butcher recently had to cancel a couple of shows because he was hospitalized, not for COVID, but related to asthma, which is kind of scary because if he has asthma to that level, and I don't know if he's vaccinated, and I don't want to get into that argument, but it seems to me like it's really dangerous for him to have something like asthma, which deals with your respiratory system, with something like COVID going around, which attacks the respiratory system and everything else. Nevertheless, just get well to him, man. One of the dopest rappers out today, bar none. Really quick, let's get into some of my topics. So my review of season 2 of Wu-Tang and American Saga is a A+. And I would say I gave the first season an A+. And I'm not going to take a plus or minus off because instead of the RZA, we got a DMX clone, right? In that delivery. But I felt like I was excited to watch these. Now, obviously, somebody like myself who grew up when this album came out, who was there for the beginnings of Wu-Tang and seeing them emerge, having my own story as a fan, discovering their music for the very first time. Wu-Tang Clan was something unique, something you had never heard of at the time. Now, there are things I could take points off for, and I'll just go over those real quick before I just say why I loved it. Again, the RZA, the RZA delivery with the talking. I don't know. It was the RZA on set. The RZA doesn't talk like that. Yo, I'm saying, son, we gotta make this album. It drove me crazy. Especially those first couple of episodes, it drove me crazy because I was like, he didn't even talk like this the first season. And then when RZA does his interview tour, RZA don't even talk like that. So why was this done? Maybe RZA felt like that's how he used to talk. Maybe I got to go back in time and watch a couple of old, interviews of RZA on that first album. Maybe he used to talk like that and I forgot. But that was a pain. Then the overly done references to lyrics and skits and songs layered throughout the dialogue. Now, some people will say, well, some of the things they said, they put in their music. But this was ridiculous. It was like every episode, there were like 30 of them. The first season, it was like none of that. And I'm pretty sure some of their sayings existed before they were like in album mode. It was just way too much, man. It was like too many wink and a nod moments. I'm supreme clientele, you know what I'm saying? My neck's only built for Cuban links. Yo, pass that to Cal. Oh, you know what would be better than a sword? A liquid sword. Like, come on, man. We know. We get it. It's Wu-Tang. We get it. But it didn't turn me off from the show. It just was annoying to hear. But all in all, I liked it, man. Hands down the best episode is RZA going through the process of trying to make the beat for Protect Your Neck. It is, if you have never been around a producer trying to make a hip hop beat, you don't understand how much that is a part of the process. The samples, speeding the sample up, slowing it down, adding drums, distorting things, trying to find that sound that works, finding something you think that works and then hearing it again in the studio and saying, nah, that's not it. Like, it was just a dope episode, especially for any hip hop fan who never knew about that process or who knows that process all too well. And I believe it was directed by Mario Van Peebles. Makes sense, right? But it was episodes like that, episodes of being on that boat, trying to get Ray and Ghost together, watching throughout the season, watching them go from enemies to becoming really close, to being really cool with one another. I think that was just dope, man. And again, it could be the fact that I'm a huge Wu-Tang Clan fan. I know the stories behind the stories and just watching it play out. Some people will say the delivery of some of the raps lacked some of the oomph. Yeah, I can agree with that. But all in all, I felt like it was a pretty good season. And it definitely teased a third season that should probably be the final season, if you ask me. Because when you think about it, Wu-Tang Clan, even though they're still around, even though they've released albums over the year, multiple solo albums, multiple group albums, their run is literally like 93 to maybe 97 as a group. Like, as far as, them being as dope as they've been. We already know what Ghost did, you know what I'm saying, Cuba Links 2. We already know, how these things play out. But for a show, the only things that I would want to see, and I don't know if we'd get to see them because it looked like the albums were complete, even though The Flood did what it did, right? Is, what happens after that with all these solo albums and a lot of the other things that we know, right? Like Wu-Tang Clan Forever album, them coming back from that second album after having their solo success, Deck's situation with his album being lost in the flood. I think that should just cap it off. And the season's theme should be Wu-Tang Forever, and that should be it. Put a bow on it, done. So we'll see. But if you haven't watched season 1 or season 2 and you're a hip hop fan or you know Wu-Tang and you didn't get a chance to watch it yet, I highly recommend it for anyone because I think it's just a good show, in general. A lot of dope stories to be told there and a lot of, at least partially, because I know all of it isn't true, but, a look into who these guys were as kids coming up, and some of them kids, some of them grown men, but you know what I mean, them coming up in the rap game. Nas is directing a documentary on the hip hop TV show Video Music Box. All my peoples from New York, all my peoples who may know of this particular show, underground hip hop local show in New York called Video Music Box. You don't understand. if you're gonna give Stretch and Bobbito flowers, you're gonna give Ralph McDaniel some flowers. Ralph McDaniel was showing me rappers that I had heard on, overnight hip hop mix shows where they didn't even tell you who the record was by. They just talking about something else. You're like, hold up, what was that y'all played? And all you had was the fact that you recorded it, but you didn't know who the artist was, right? You couldn't use Shazam to say, what song is this? All you had was your tape. But Video Music Box was like, oh, I heard that song on the radio. Well, wait a minute. I'm watching this show that's showing all these dope hip hop videos, real hip hop too, but they also showing like footage from nightclubs, sometimes like from the night before. Like if you watching on a Saturday, you watching a video of young Biggie or young Nas at the tunnel performing. And it ain't just performing their single or the song to the video you're gonna watch next. Sometimes it was that. Sometimes it was like freestyles on stage, backstage. I mean, really exclusive stuff. So if you're a hip hop fan and you from somewhere else, and maybe you've heard of Video Music Box, maybe you haven't, trust me. Trust me when I tell you, there's no way this could be whack, especially if they're allowed to use the majority of the footage that I used to see on a regular basis, me and others, right? Used to see on a regular basis watching that channel. I kid you not, multiple eras of dope behind the scenes hip hop archived for you. We talking about from the late 80s golden eras all the way into the 90s golden eras. I know it should be one golden era. We're not going to do that right now. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's, to me, my anticipation, my expectations for this are sky high. There's no way this could be whack. So look out for that. Let me see if we got a date or something on that, because now it says Nas to direct. Has Nas directed anything before? Because that part scares me. Maybe he has. I know Mass Appeal is his thing, but that doesn't mean he directed everything, Let's see. This is on hiphopdx.com. Oh, here we go. Nas is set to step into the director's chair once again. Oh, once again. All right. For an upcoming documentary on the groundbreaking hip-hop TV show Video Music Box, airing on Showtime December 3rd. Yeah, man. I'm going to tell y'all right now, go to Instagram, follow Video Music Box. Be on the lookout for that one. It should be dope, I'm telling you. And it's not just East Coast. It's not just East Coast. I mean, it is East Coast, but, a couple West Coast legends came across and did shows and stuff like that. Snoop Dogg says he helped Warren G record his album in secret to protect him from Suge Knight. This also is a story on hiphopdx.com. Now, this is interesting because I don't know where it's coming from with that. So, on Wednesday, Snoop stopped by the Breakfast Club to chop it up with Charlamagne the God, DJ Envy, and Angela Yee. At one point during the conversation, Snoop was looking back on his Death Row Records days and revealed he actually helped pen Warren G's 1994 debut, Regulate G-Funk Era, in an effort to keep him safe from Suge Knight, who was Death Row's CEO at the time. Wow. Well, let me say this before I read a little bit more, because I don't want to read the whole article. This is on hiphopdx.com. You can check it out for yourself. But when you listen, okay, I'll give my opinion afterward. You're right. Like I said, my pen had something to do with that, Snoop said. We was trying to protect the homie from Suge Knight at the time. Suge was taking everything, so we wanted to make sure Warren G had a dope record without him being able to get it. So we silently, me and Corrupt and a few others, went to work for Warren G to make sure that his record could be what it is. Wow. So not just Snoop ghostwriting. But you know what's crazy about that? And again, a great album isn't only about the lyrics. It's also about the music. And the music on that Warren G album is dope. Really dope. It really helped to like punctuate the sound of the G-Funk era after the Chronic and everything else. But this is what I was going to say. Sometimes with ghostwriting, depending on the ghostwriter, some ghostwriters are like chameleons, right? They can ghostwrite for somebody and it sounds like their music. That the artist they're writing for is music. But then there are others who ghostwrite, who write the way they usually write. And if you remove Warren G's voice, keep the lyrics, but say them to yourself, or imagine Snoop rhyming regulate, and this DJ, it kind of sounds like it would be a Snoop record, right? But nevertheless, it doesn't take anything away from it because honestly, we're not talking about somebody who set the world on fire lyrically and now we're finding out someone else wrote it. It just was a dope album. And to know that Snoop and these guys helped them out, I mean, I think it did a lot for Warren G back then because it was a continuation of the success. And for those who don't know with the whole protection thing, Warren G had a deal with Def Jam, not Death Row. So hence, Snoop and them keeping it a secret that they're ghostwriting because if they're ghostwriting and they're Death Row artists, well, Suge Knight can come after that publishing because I believe he gets a certain percentage, right? Death Row gets a percentage off of whatever they do, even if they're ghostwriting for another artist on another label. So it was dope for them to keep that secret. I guess statute of limitations is gone or something, and that's why Snoop is just airing it out, but it makes perfect sense to me. And lastly, keeping it on the West Coast tip, on October 29th, 1991, Ice Cube's sophomore release, Death Certificate, was released. Well, you know it was released because I just said released. But regardless, if you do not understand, and maybe it's debatable, right? Because there's some people who say America's Most Wanted is Ice Cube's best solo album. But I beg to differ. It is definitely a classic for Ice Cube, but I do not think it's better than Death Certificate. Death Certificate is a journey. You know what I'm saying? America's Most Wanted was like Ice Cube's finally free from NWA. What type of music would he make if he was solo? And it's almost like he's testing out all these different stories. Death Certificate is so refined as an album experience, musically, lyrically, conceptually. I remember, first of all, let me just say this so you already know. It is my favorite album of all time. Above The Chronic for me, above Ready to Die, as far as favorite, above Illmatic. It is my favorite hip-hop album of all time. Let me tell you why. It is mainly because it was the second album I spent my own money on. If you watched my YouTube video where I talked about the first album I ever spent money on, which I still have the cassette, it was Poor Righteous Teachers, Pure Poverty. It was more so about me going in there like, I got some money to spend. I get to buy my first record with my own money, and I bought that. But not too long after that, Ice Cube's Death Certificate was coming out. And I remember reading about the cover because there was a controversy about it not being called Death Certificate, but the fact that there was a body, like Ice Cube is on the cover, right, in a morgue, and there's a body near him under a white sheet and a foot sticking out, and a toe tag says Uncle Sam. So you already know they upset already as soon as they see that. Also, It was the first time we saw Ice Cube without a Jerry curl. Like, who's that? I mean, y'all know him now. I mean, he probably looks more like Craig to y'all, right? But to us, it was like, oh, he cut the Jerry curl off. And he was claiming to be Muslim. I didn't know what this record was going to sound like. All I knew, it was a lot of controversy behind it. I had money to buy it, and I was going to buy it. Bought that album, headphones on, right? Because you don't want your moms to hear all these cuss words, especially coming from Ice Cube. You better put those headphones on. And it was like I wasn't even in my room anymore. It was like I was being taken on a tour led by Ice Cube through a West Coast neighborhood. And he covered every topic from gangbanging to selling out and moving out of the neighborhood to how the Koreans in the corner stores treat you, to the riots, to slinging drugs in other states. You know what I'm saying? Religion, politics. Everything was being discussed. And what made it even dope, besides dope bars and beats, was that one of the greatest diss songs of all time is at the end of this experience. Can you imagine that? You're listening to an album, you get all the way to the end, you're like, man, this is a classic day one listen. And the final song is a diss to NWA. A diss record that rivals The Bridge Is Over, Ether, Takeover, Back to Back, whatever ones you want to name. Better than some of them. NWA didn't put another album out after this diss record. Not saying that the diss record made them say, all right, we quit. But it brought to light a lot. And it was a vicious diss. If you've seen, the movie Straight Outta Compton, you already know they played the whole record. But the album itself, man, is just such a time capsule from 1991 that, if you do the knowledge on it, right? If you do the knowledge on what was happening that year in politics, in the black community, with the police, right? Rodney King situation, everything. When you look at all of that, and then you press play on this album, it's almost like jumping in a time machine. You feel the essence because of what Ice Cube raps about. My summer vacation. My God, Ice Cube was a master storyteller. But he was a master at taking traditional American things, right? And giving them a gritty, from a ghetto perspective situation, right? My summer vacation was a thing that, I don't know if it still happens, right? But when kids, typically elementary, return to school, they have to write a paper about what you do for the summer when you weren't in school, right? And it's usually, me and my parents went to Canada, and we went to Italy, and, we got a cabin and we went to a resort. That was like the prototypical thing you would hear about, whether it was in your real life or something you would see on TV, but not Ice Cube's version. Ice Cube version was real. It was like, no, this is what happens in the hood, because we can't even go away to camp. We ain't going on family trips. We just out here wilding for the summer. Man, listen, Ice Cube Death Certificate, for me, top 5 album of all time. In a lot of respects, tends to get disrespected a little bit. But I'm telling you now, you press play on that album, it becomes real about Ice Cube and his legacy in the hip-hop game. That's going to do it for me for this week. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Clubhouse, all of it, at Vegas World INC. And please know that this podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. All you have to do is go to your favorite podcasting app Type in the search bar Hip Hop Now podcast. Find the podcast, hit the subscribe button, and stay locked into weekly hip hop content. Again, if you'd like to become a producer of this podcast and support this podcast, visit patreon.com/hiphopnow. Until next time, y'all, I am not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.
Drop it on the random.